My daughter destroyed evidence for a murder case, and I've never been prouder. My 23-year-old daughter Ivy got arrested for breaking into the police precinct and burning evidence for the Richardson murder trial that was supposed to start the next day. The detective's voice was shaking with rage when he called me at 2 in the morning while I was dead asleep in bed. Your daughter just destroyed 6 months of work and ruined the biggest murder case this city has seen in a decade, and we have her on camera pouring gasoline on evidence boxes in our secure storage room before lighting them on fire. I threw on clothes and raced to the station where I found Ivy handcuffed to a metal bench with burn marks on her hands and ash in her hair, but she was sitting perfectly straight with this look on her face like she'd just won the lottery. The arresting officer was screaming at her about federal charges and 20 years in prison, while other cops stood around looking at her like they wanted to throw her through a wall. Ivy, what the hell were you thinking? I asked, kneeling in front of her while the detective paced behind me, rattling off charges including breaking and entering, destruction of property, obstruction of justice, and arson. She looked at me with those sharp brown eyes she got from her father and spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. The evidence was fake and everyone here knows it. The detective stopped pacing and turned toward her slowly. You don't know what you're talking about. You're not a cop. You're just some girl whose husband works here. My husband came home crying last night because he couldn't understand why nothing about this case made sense, Ivy said calmly while the detective's face turned red. The blood on the knife was dripped on after it was already in the evidence bag because the pattern shows it fell straight down, not at an angle like it would during a stabbing. I felt my stomach drop because an innocent man had been sitting in jail for 5 months waiting for tomorrow's trial. The other officers in the room were starting to shift uncomfortably and exchange glances. You destroyed evidence because you think you know better than trained detectives? The detective shouted, slamming his hand on the desk. That evidence was going to convict a killer tomorrow. Ivy shook her head and looked directly at the captain who'd just walked in to see what the commotion was about. Captain, the fingerprint on the knife belongs to someone who can't even hold a knife properly because of nerve damage in that hand from an old injury. The captain's face went pale and he stepped closer to Ivy while the detective started sweating. How could you possibly know that? Because my husband looked up the suspect's medical records tonight when he couldn't sleep, Ivy said. And then she turned back to the detective. But that's not why I burned the evidence. Everyone in the room went silent and I could hear my heart pounding in my chest as Ivy continued in that same eerily calm voice. I burned it because when I broke into this building tonight, I went to your office first and found something interesting. The detective lunged at Ivy, but 2 other officers grabbed him while he screamed that she was lying, that she had no right to be in his office, but Ivy just kept talking. You had the real evidence hidden in your desk showing who actually killed Richardson, and you've been getting paid $50,000 a month to frame the wrong person. You're insane! The detective shouted, struggling against the officers holding him. You just destroyed the only evidence in a murder case! Ivy reached into her pocket with her cuffed hands and pulled out a flash drive. This has photos of everything I found in your desk, including the burner phone with texts about payment for framing an innocent man, plus the real forensics report you tried to hide. The captain grabbed the flash drive while the detective went from red to white and started babbling about how this was illegal, how she'd broken into his office, but other officers were already backing away from him like he had the plague. My husband checked your bank account yesterday and found deposits that matched dates when someone made large cash withdrawals, Ivy continued while the detective's world crumbled.